Hey everyone, welcome to Insights with Benny, a space where ideas meet action, where stories inspire reflection, and perspectives challenge the status quo. Whether you're here for clarity, challenge, or quiet wisdom, this is your place. Today's episode is titled The Generosity of Shadows. It is not the gift that traps us, it is the story told around it. The Generosity of Shadows is a dive into oppressor's generosity. How symbolic benevolence and fear-based narratives sustain power through illusion, control, and civic compliance. As always, these are straight from the heart of Insight's blog. Let's begin. What is taken by force, we call theft. What is taken with a smile, we call duty. The Woodhollow Tale. The logging town of Woodhollow lay quietly amid a dying forest. It used to be full of life, but now it looked as empty and tired as the trees around it. The winds sighed through brittle branches, and chimneys exhaled no more than wisps of smoke. They're barely alive, like the people themselves. The townsfolk huddled in thick, patched cloaks, their faces lean, tired, and gray, dragging bundles of twigs and dulled axes behind them. Once lush and endless, the forest now stood like a skeleton grove, stripped bare, overworked, and weary. At the center of town stood an old timber throne, carved from a massive, strong ironwood trunk that was said to have taken 100 men and 100 days to fall. Upon it sat Lord Thornwood, the proclaimed guardian of the grove. Adorned in robes of green velvet stitched with golden leaves, his guards, all cloaked in fur and bound in iron, stood beside him, motionless as statues. Lord Thornwood had recently doubled the wood quotas demanded from the people of Woodhollow. Their lives crumbled under the weight of Lord Thornwood's increased demand. Homes sat in ruin, holes patched with moss and cloth. Fires remained unlit in many hearths, not from neglect, but from the absence of wood. All the timber, every splinter, all went to Thornwood. Eventually, the silence of Woodhollow broke. The people decided to speak out, one after another. Bram, a weary man with calloused hands and a broken axe, stepped forward and bowed low. "My lord, the forest is thinning. We can barely find enough wood to meet your new demand," he said wearily. Then, Elsa, shivering and clutching her child to her chest, added, "We sleep in the cold because there's no wood left for our homes. Please, lower the quota, or at least let us keep enough to build shelters." Lord Thornwood smiled with eerie calm, resting his fingers on the carved arms of his throne. "I understand your pain, truly. But the invaders are coming. If you don't bring more wood to me, you'll not be protected when they arrive." Bram furrowed his brow, his voice low, and whispered, "But we've never seen these invaders, not once." Thornwood's tone sharpened. He said firmly, "The invaders work in silence. You wouldn't know they're here until it's too late." Merrick, the Lord's steward, stepped forward and dropped dusty bundles into waiting arms. "His Grace has spared some used straw and sawdust from his own sawmill. Accept his kindness with gratitude," he says. Willa smiled, clutched her sack, and said, "Thank you, my lord. So generous, thank you." Bram leaned closer to Elsa and whispered, "But he builds new palaces every season from the wood we cut and bring to him." Before she could respond, Garen, one of the few who still believe, spoke out firmly. "Don't be ungrateful. Other towns have it worse. At least we get something." Lord Thornwood reclined on his throne, lifting a goblet of pineberry wine, rare and sweet, brewed from trees no one else could touch. "You have the best life in the realm, don't forget it. And beware, beyond Woodhollow, the towns are cursed, and no one will protect you there," he said. And so, the people gave more, lived with less, and thanked the one who took the most, because he gave back just enough to keep them believing. Beneath the timber throne. They rob you of everything, then give back a crust, and you thank them for it. The quiet desperation in Woodhollow paints a stark picture of power dynamics masked by apparent kindness. Lord Thornwood, seated upon his lavish timber throne, embodies a subtle form of control that operates not through overt oppression, but through carefully managed false generosity. His gifts of sawdust and straw, symbolic tokens rather than substantive social change, highlight a critical truth. Appearances can mask exploitation, ensuring compliance and dependency among the townsfolk. Woodhollow's tale is an allegorical reflection of the broader societal realities where those in power leverage minimal concessions to maintain control and silence dissent. Such dynamics occur widely in politics, business, and everyday social interactions, often cloaked in rhetoric of benevolence. This phenomenon is evident in systems that offer no real reforms but rely on manipulation to create the illusion of change and progress, a psychological strategy of pacification through symbolic gestures. The dynamic echoes what Paulo Freire describes as false generosity, wherein oppressors offer superficial benefits that do not alter systemic inequalities, but foster gratitude and dependency. Similarly, Antonio Gramsci's cultural hegemony theory explores how powerful groups subtly impose their values, ensuring continued control without overt force. The allegorical tale of Woodhollow illustrates a concept known as oppressor's generosity, a practice where those in power offer small gestures of kindness while continuing to uphold systems of structural exploitation. These acts are designed to pacify rather than empower, keeping the oppressed in a constant state of gratitude and submission. The oppressor appears benevolent by projecting an image of social responsibility, even as inequality deepens. Recognizing this dynamic is essential to understanding how superficial acts of benevolence can function as tools of sustained control rather than genuine change. The cycle of manufactured dependency. In Woodhollow, Lord Thornwood skillfully escalated the townsfolk's wood quotas by invoking a shadowy threat. This carefully crafted fear created an atmosphere of continual urgency, making the populace feel increasingly vulnerable and reliant on his protection. By leveraging this manufactured threat, Thornwood validated his ever-increasing demands, making each extraction appear necessary and justified. The situation of Woodhollow illustrates a broader systemic issue, a manipulative cycle of engineered demand, strategically maintained to sustain control and suppress autonomy. This cycle unfolds in distinct, recurring phases, as follows. 1. Increased demand. Authorities impose greater burdens, creating immediate stress. Extraction masquerades as investment, often framed as necessary sacrifices by the people for public goods. Phrases such as, for the greater good, to protect society, or to build our future are commonly used. Yet these promised services typically remain inefficient, limited, or inaccessible to many. 2. Manufacture fear. Authorities justify escalating demands by citing vague or exaggerated threats. Fear-based rhetoric, such as warnings of external forces, economic collapse, or societal decline, is frequently deployed, making people feel vulnerable and desperate for security. 3. Performative generosity. Minimal and superficial relief or benefit is offered, creating an illusion of genuine support. These gestures, though inadequate, appear significant because they are contrasted sharply against an artificially created scarcity and desperation. 4. Demand gratitude. Authorities expect acknowledgement and praise for these minor concessions. Citizens begin to feel beholden to the system or its leaders for what little they receive, even though they have typically sacrificed far more than they gain. Gratitude replaces critique. The people will begin to believe that without the system's generosity, they'd have nothing. 5. Suppressed dissent. Voices questioning the legitimacy of the demands and the minimal benefits to townsfolk are marginalized or silenced. Critics are portrayed as ungrateful, disloyal, disruptive, or even threatening social unity, thereby discouraging public discuss or debate and enforcing public conformity and silence. N6. Demand more. Under the guise of continued protection or progress, authorities further escalate their demands. Each new request builds on previous compliance, perpetuating the cycle indefinitely and deepening societal dependency. This cycle does more than merely maintain fragile stability. It actively deepens societal divides and ensures the perpetuation of power imbalances. Each cycle reinforces dependence and compliance, gradually eroding individual and collective capacity for genuine empowerment or meaningful reform. Shadows of control. In Wood Hollow, the ominous yet unseen invaders invoked by Lord Thornwood epitomize how intangible threats can be strategically wielded to consolidate power. These shadowy, intangible, ever-elusive threats prove particularly effective because their ambiguity prevents verification or dismissal. By leveraging the fear of unknown dangers, leaders like Thornwood can manipulate public perception, ensuring continued compliance with escalating demands. This tactic mirrors numerous scenarios where governments or powerful entities frequently exploit vague or exaggerated threats to secure public obedience. Examples include invoking security concerns, economic instability, environmental or social anxieties to justify restrictive policies, or increased resource extraction. The continuous presence of such threats, regardless of their substantiation, maintains a state of perpetual anxiety among citizens, encouraging them to willingly surrender personal freedoms, resources, rights, and privacy in exchange for promised, but often unrealized benefits. Thus, fear operates not merely as a transient emotion, but as a powerful, sustained instrument of social and political control, perpetuating a system of dependence and diminishing public capacity for critical resistance. Lord Thornwood's offerings of bags of used straw and sacks of sawdust were presented as benevolent gifts, but in reality they were mere remnants of excess from the forest, a performance of care, not its substance. Yet these scraps felt like salvation to people stripped of basic necessities. Desperation has a way of distorting value, turning paltry gestures into perceived lifelines. You asked for economic reform, but here's a cash benefit and a civic holiday, the authorities would say. Lord Thornwood's brand of manipulation thrives on deprivation. When scarcity becomes the norm, even the most meager relief can appear generous. The same pattern plays out across society. A modest tax rebate, a temporary price incentive, a one-time bonus, or a refurbished facility is framed as evidence of care and progress, offered in place of meaningful reform or systemic efficiency. The people ask for change, and instead, the system is rebranded. The same structure, the same people, but now under a friendlier logo and a polished slogan, we're building trust through transformation. These symbolic gestures are amplified through strategic messaging and presented as proof that the leaders are listening, that the system is working. But these gestures often serve to distract from deeper structural inefficiencies. They create a veneer of compassion that obscures exploitation, keeping populations placated while meaningful reform is avoided. Gratitude in such contexts becomes a tool of control, not a natural response to generosity, but a manufactured emotion conditioned by false scarcity. They denied our request for health benefits, but they gave us chocolates during Mental Health Week. Thank you, our noble leaders, the oppressed would say. In Wood Hollow, as in many societies, the true cost of these tokens is invisibility, the ongoing needs that go unmet, the inefficiencies that remain unchallenged, and the illusion that survival is a gift bestowed rather than a right defended. These illusions persist because they are constantly reinforced by subtle, repeated performances that suppress dissent and reward obedience. Occasionally, a voice breaks through, "Wake up, folks! Those gifts are just your own wages regifted with a shiny ribbon." But such voices are often drowned out by the louder chorus of compliance. When Bram dared to question the phantom threat, it wasn't only Lord Thornwood who responded, it was his fellow townsman Garin who quickly silenced him with, "Other towns have it worse." Another might have echoed, "Pay no heed to that doom-monger." These moments are revealing. Power sustains itself not just through command, but through communal complicity. Fear and scarcity had worn down the townsfolk's resolve. subtly reshaping their loyalties. Gratitude became a civic duty, and questioning, a betrayal. This silencing of skeptics through peer pressure and shame is one of the most insidious tools in systems of managed dependency. The mechanism is psychological. Those who challenge the narrative are branded as disloyal, ungrateful, or even dangerous. Their voices are delegitimized not necessarily through censorship, but through public disapproval and suspicion. The community becomes the enforcer. Such dynamics fuel a culture of self-censorship. People learn to suppress their doubts, fearing ostracism more than inequality. This is how groupthink takes root, not due to force, but through emotional conditioning. Over time, the habit of silence solidifies and questioning the system feels riskier than enduring its inefficiencies. In environments like Wood Hollow, truth becomes less about facts and more about alignment with the public view. To speak against the grain is to threaten the delicate illusion of social order. And so the illusion persists, safe, undisturbed, and unchallenged by the oppressed and the afraid, who remain quietly complicit. Lessons beneath the forest floor. If a system exploits the people but uses false generosity to appear benevolent, it creates a polished illusion of social responsibility while deepening the crises. Sure, we stand in the sun all day, waiting to get one cupcake a day after we bake them. But hey, it's free. They're so kind, the subjugated would say. Wood Hollow's desolate forest is more than a scene. It is a mirror of the decay beneath the surface of systems managed by illusion. Once a thriving forest, it now stands skeletal, overworked, and unreplenished. This mirrors the condition of societies that exhaust their people, resources, and potential while projecting an image of progress. The real decay isn't in the trees, it's in the decisions and priorities. This reflects the broader phenomenon known as the resource curse, wherein societies or communities rich in natural or human capital paradoxically remain challenged. The curse, however, is not in the lack of resources, but in the structures of inefficiency, mismanagement, greed, and performative leadership that divert those resources away from the public good. In environments like these, even the act of questioning becomes dangerous. Calls for efficiency or accountability are often dismissed as obstructionist or anti-progress. However, as Wood Hollow shows us, progress reduced to performance without accountability results in an impoverished system. 3 critical insights and lessons emerge from the Wood Hollow tale as follows. 1. Accountability. Genuine reform demands openness, not only about threats and challenges, but about where resources go, who benefits, and how decisions are made. Without transparency, systems cannot be trusted. 2. Critical literacy. Citizens must be equipped to recognize manipulative generosity and symbolic reforms. Without this discernment, societies are doomed to accept illusions as progress and suffer quietly while change remains abstract. 3. Community stewardship. Empowering the people to manage their resources is not just a safeguard against exploitation. It is a civic responsibility. Stewardship demands that communities not only care for what they have, but also ask questions, seek answers, and hold decision-makers to account. When citizens are disengaged, abuse flourishes, and power remains in the shadows. Without informed and empowered citizens, the most promising society can be hollowed out, just like Wood Hollow. As Paulo Freire observed, true generosity consists precisely in fighting to destroy the causes which nourish false charity. False generosity constrains the fearful and subdued, the rejects of life, to extend their trembling hands. Stewardship is not passive, it is participatory, demanding courage and collective will. Reclaiming the forest. Imagine a Wood Hollow where the townsfolk reclaimed not just the woods, but their voice, where the people, no longer bowed to false scarcity or haunted by invisible enemies, walked into the forest not as subjects, but as stewards. Imagine them gathering not to plead for relief, but to deliberate and rebuild. In such a world, the timber throne would be nothing more than a relic, weathered, abandoned, and with no powers. Reclaiming the forest means more than recovering resources. It means recovering the narrative. It means naming what's in the shadows, questioning what was claimed, and gaining what's rightfully deserved. It means refusing the pageantry of empty gestures and instead insisting on the substance of efficiency and shared power. The Woodhollow's allegory tale is a mirror. It reflects our political theaters, our workplace hierarchies, and our civic structures. In them, we must ask, are we living in systems of shared benefit, or are we applauding performances staged to keep us silent? Remember, the power of illusion lies in its repetition, but illusions crack when we stop repeating them. And so the question lingers, not just for Woodhollow, but for us all. Will we remain grateful for sawdust, or will we demand the right to manage our woods? The forest, after all, is still there, waiting for us all. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them on social and tag me with hashtag Generosity of Shadows. Please subscribe to my channels, like, share, and help spread the message. Until next time, stay reflective.